a couple fun facts before we get started. So first off, you might remember if you were watching with Empire Strikes Back, I was talking about how George Lucas got in some trouble with the opening credits stuff. So the Directors Guild and Writers Guild fined him, and eventually he left the Directors Guild, which means he couldn't select his first choice for director for Return of the Jedi because he wanted Steven Spielberg to direct it. But Steven was banned from doing so because of the fact that it wasn't going to be a union or it wasn't approved by the Directors Guild. So he asked several other people, and most of them declined until finally he found a Welshman by the name of Richard Marquand. Holler to all you friends of mine from Wales. I know one of you's out there. You know who you are. But yeah, Richard Marquand had only directed like 3 films before this, and a few TV shows and stuff, documentaries mostly. Hi guys, hi Corey, hi Ian, hi Noe. So glad to have you joining me. So I'll be talking throughout about Richard Marquand, and apparently he's had very little experience with special effects, practically no experience with special effects. So that was a big issue, and George Lucas ended up spending more time on this set than he even did on Empire. So that's kind of crazy. Couple interesting quotes. This one from Mark Hamill. With everything that's been set up, you can't bring the trilogy to a conclusion without disappointing some people. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? I liked both of these 2 quotes because, hey guys, because there's so much shade being thrown at Rise of Skywalker right now, and I am a big fan of Rise of Skywalker. But third acts are hard. Conclusions for stories are always the most difficult of trilogies. And then another quote here by Gene Siskel, who is one of the best film critics of our generation. He gave the film 4 stars out of 4 and wrote that Return of the Jedi is a childlike delight. It's the best video game around. I thought that was fascinating because a lot of people have been critiquing Rise of Skywalker because it plays out like a video game. People, going on these fetch quests. And I see that as like a compliment because, I don't play a lot of video games, but from what I hear, yeah, I think we're good.
I think it's good.
It's just being funny here.
Yeah.
Still dealing with camera stuff, y'all. Appreciate your patience. And we're going to get started here shortly. But yeah, I don't play video games, but from what I understand from people who are big into gaming, it's some of the best storytelling out there. So here we go. 3, 2, 1, go. Oh man, there's so many weird technical things I got to figure out when I'm doing these. Glad to have Tim and Sarah on again. Let's watch this Nyan Numb movie. Oh, Nyan Numb. Corey, did you realize that they killed him off in Rise of Skywalker with hardly any fanfare? That was sad. Alright, so we're good to go now. I'm on the Lucasfilm logo. I think I'm going to turn this up a bit more. Long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Star Wars. Wasn't that a quote from Gene Siskel? Not enough Nyan Numb, huh? No, I don't think I realized that. All right, episode 6. So, right off the bat, let's talk about the title of this film, Return of the Jedi. That was the name that George originally wanted the movie to go by, but people were like, "Oh, that's not gripping enough. It should be called Revenge of the Jedi." So, George changed it to Revenge of the Jedi, and they even started making posters that said Revenge of the Jedi. Sorry, I'm trying to find my second remote. Oh well. And then last second, George decided to go back to Return of the Jedi. So you can see online some of the original posters that say Revenge of the Jedi, but the whole idea was that a Jedi would not really take revenge. And so that's why George wanted it changed. Alright, so it's setting the stage. When last we met our heroes, Han Solo is frozen in carbonite. Nice. You had a Revenge of the Jedi patch. I would love to get some old Revenge of the Jedi swag. Hi, Tyler Landis. I hope your wife is with you. That's my brother-in-law. All right, we pan down and we immediately see the second Death Star. For those of you just joining, we're only 2 minutes and 5 seconds in, so catch up. It's funny how like it took them 20 years to build the first Death Star, and only like what, 3 or 4 to build the second one. I mean, it's not completely done, of course, but when I was a kid, I thought that this was the original Death Star, and it had only really blown up in like those 2 places. This movie too, I feel like, well, all along this original trilogy, we've been getting to learn more about Darth Vader, of course. The big reveal happening in an Empire. And in this final act, we get to see, that the weakness in Darth Vader is really the love for his son. And then we have the prequels, where George tries to tell the story of how he became the Man in Black. All right, so this commander here is his name is Jar Jar, and he originally had a lot more scenes in this film than what ended up happening. He actually has like a lot of interaction with the Emperor. A lot of the cut scenes I just found out today, by the way, are on Disney Plus. So for like Empire Strikes Back, that whole Wampa stuff that I was telling you all about, is on Disney Plus, and you can watch the Wampa stuff there. Hey, there's my mom. Hi, Mom. Oh, Blue Harvest. Yeah, I gotta tell everybody the story about that. Man, I've been watching a lot of behind the scenes stuff lately and hearing the original actor's voice with Darth Vader, and it's so less intimidating than James Earl Jones. He's just got that beautiful, deep bass voice. So Jar Jar is very excited to hear that the Emperor is coming. So yeah, when they first started shooting this movie out in Arizona, all this desert stuff is not actually in Tunisia like they did with the first movie. All this Tatooine stuff is in Arizona. So they were really worried about the press and just fans coming to like find them shooting. And in fact, some of this desert was close to like a dune buggy hangout place, apparently. So they changed the name, like their undercover name for the film was Blue Harvest. And it wasn't until, Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher showed up that people started to realize, wait a second, this is Star Wars. Steven, how you doing? All right, the whole Jabba's palace stuff is my favorite part of Return of the Jedi, hands down. Lots of cool new characters. Jabba himself is like the coolest, biggest puppet. And this droid here, for those of you who are Mandalorian fans, we get to see him kind of come back, or a droid like that come back. And of course, it's always good to see 3PO and R2 back together again. The old Laurel and Hardy duo, right? Okay, so apparently the backstory for this palace is that it used to be a monastery for monks. And pretty soon you'll see a spider droid walk past this opening right behind 3PO. Right there. So there's like a glass bulb in the center of this spider droid. And George's story was that the monks would put like their they're, I guess, decapitated heads in them. I don't know. Just a little like side weird thing that I don't quite understand, but also love. A horror beyond imagination. Yep, that was the tagline for the fictitious Blue Harvest. All right, here we got some Gamorrean guards, the piggies, and Bib Fortuna is the name of the guy with the tentacles. He's a Twi'lek, that's his alien species, and he's like the major domo for Jabba the Hutt. Now, there was a scene that was shot that was supposed to take place before this, where Luke takes the droids back to Obi-Wan Kenobi's house. And there, he builds his new lightsaber, his green lightsaber, because y'all might remember he lost his blue lightsaber, which was Anakin's, when he fought his father in Cloud City. So he built his new lightsaber, and then he told R2 to take himself and 3PO off to Jabba's palace. Also in that scene, Vader communicates and reaches out to Luke in the Force and says something. Hey, kid. No, but that deleted scene I think is on Disney Plus, so definitely check it out. Yeah. It's funny about Jabba's character design too, Corey, because I guess there was a comic that came out beforehand with Jabba, but it was not this version of Jabba. It was just a bipedal, furry guy. The giant puppet is amazing. What's funny is I kept on trying to get a definitive answer of how many people are operating that huge puppet, and I came up from saw everything from like 3 to 6 different puppeteers working on this guy. So who knows? I know for a fact there was a guy in the tail. There was a little person operating the tail and wiggling that thing back and forth. About 5 guys. Sounds about right. And I know there's another guy that's operating like the eyeballs, like remotely, I think.
I'm sure that we can work out an arrangement which will be mutually beneficial and enable us to avoid any unpleasant complications. As a token of my goodwill, I present to you a gift. These 2 droids.
I just love how 3PO is totally in the dark about everything. Again, going back to my theory that R2 knows everything and 3PO doesn't know jack.
Master Plagen Midlander, this is the Jedi.
We're doomed.
Big, beautiful puppet. Here comes Han Solo. Frozen in carbonite. So this little monkey lizard, this Kowakian monkey lizard is his species. His name is Salacious Crumb. And apparently Phil Tippett named him. I don't know if you heard this one, Corey. I know you're a big Phil Tippett fan. But that Phil Tippett's the guy who created a lot of these monsters. And he came up with the name one day when he reached over to tie his shoes and was goofing around and called them, "Hey, I need to tie my shoelaces." And that became Salacious, which eventually became Salacious B. Crumb. B is Salacious Crumb's middle initial, and the joke is that it stands for bread, and so his name is Salacious Breadcrumb. So this shot here where the droid gets burned, and there's another droid in the corner like getting his arms ripped out of his sockets. It begs the question as to like how much can droids feel? Do droids experience pain? Apparently they do to some version of pain, because you hear them screaming. As he loses his limbs. Hi Joy, hi Jenna. This is one of the few droids that actually has like a moving mouth too. And I don't think it quite syncs up with the audio perfectly in some spots. Yeah, it's a little iffy. Poor Gonk droid. How could anybody be so mean to a Gonk droid? Alright. Here we have the biggest and perhaps the least favorite addition to the special editions. The new song by the new band. So in 1997, they got a brand new song to put in here and new digital characters. This guy. It's just weird. And then the character with the long snout, her name is Cy Snoodles. I think it's just odd. Even the original song was a little strange because it didn't really fit thematically with the rest of the movie. Here we are in this gritty, like, universe, this despicable palace, and then we have these cartoons singing in a, I don't know, something about it doesn't quite work. So this Twi'lek again is the tentacled alien species. Her name is Ula, and apparently she's been trying to escape Jabba's clutches for a long time. And down she goes. And where does she go? Nobody knows. Lapty Neck. Which character is that, Corey? It's like a Star Wars Vegas show. Yeah. Speaking of Vegas show, like the whole Canto Bite sequence in The Last Jedi is another Star Wars Vegas show, which also doesn't work for me. So like, for some reason, I don't think it quite fits in this universe. So, the dancer falls down below, we hear her scream, but we don't see what the monster is. Clever storytelling there, because then when we see Luke go down, we already know something bad's going to happen. Alright, here we go, Chewbacca. I always liked, too, when Chewie's hair is more of a mess. Like, for most of this first sequence in Return of the Jedi, Boba Fett. But also, in Empire Strikes Back, when they're on Hoth, his front mane is just, like, crazy.
Jabba bids you welcome and will gladly pay for the water left by us.
Yourself.
50,000 minutes.
I think a lot of the stuff with Boba Fett was added too, like because those girls are added. So when he like touches the girl's chin and whatnot, pretty sure that's all new. Also, what is this green goo that got all over 3PO's face? Oh, Lapty Neck is the original song. Okay, I got you. By the way, the name of the band is the Max Rebo Band. And Max is the little blue guy with the snout on the organ, the ball red organ or whatever. Apparently, he was like insane, and he booked the gig agreeing that they would get paid in free food because he's also like addicted to food. All these ridiculous backstories that I find out over years of reading the Expanding Universe novels. Toy Rancor. I didn't have the Rancor. I didn't have many of the toy monsters. I think I had one of the Rontos from A New Hope that was added during the special edition, but that was it. I love that Bosch's helmet. Which, of course, assuming most of you have seen this movie, you know that Leia is under that helmet. And here's a familiar face. Lando himself, the King of Cool. Also in that shot, Lando bumps his head on the ceiling before he comes into frame. There's a lot of bumping on heads going on here. Nice. Hey Ruben, how's it going, man? So this little frog guy that's out in front of the palace, apparently his name is Bubo. So we have a Bubo, we have a Boba Fett, and then in the sequel trilogy we have Babu Frick from Rise of Skywalker. Which I thought that was funny that we have 3 names that are like super similar. But that happens. Real smooth, Lando. Real smooth. Look how cute she is in this little bounty hunter get up. She loves her man. Supposedly there's a lot of cool stuff hanging on the walls in these scenes, but I can never quite make them out because it's really dark. I always love the little things on her gloves, though. I guess it would come in handy whenever you're like getting a fight. Punch somebody in the face. So, by the way, the big reason why they froze Han and Carbonite in the last movie was because Harrison Ford didn't renew his contract. After the first movie, Carrie and Mark signed on for 2 more films. But Harrison only signed on for the 1. So he completed Empire. They wrote it in the script that he would be frozen in Carbonite. So just in case he didn't return, they had a way out. Well, they talked him into coming back, even though he didn't want to. He wanted the character to be killed off. Yeah, he does defrost pretty quickly, a matter of seconds. But yeah, I think Harrison and even the screenwriter, Lawrence Kasdan, who is the same guy who wrote Empire Strikes Back, both agreed that somebody had to die. And somebody had to die early in the story. So they wanted it to be Han. But George Lucas was not having it. Here she is. I'm such a sucker for these 2.
I gotta get you out of here.
I love how Jabba's hiding behind this curtain too. It like begs the question, do you always put that curtain up when you go to bed there, Jabba? 3PO's back there with his mouth covered. So yeah, I guess George just really wanted it to be a happy ending. They couldn't convince him to kill Han, couldn't convince him to kill Luke. I mean, I guess there's one big character who dies at the end.
John, I'll pay you, sir. You're throwing away a fork here. Don't be a fool!
We have 2 powerful friends. You're gonna regret this.
Just all that mucus coming out of Jabba's nose too. Like, imagine being the set designer who had to reapply fake mucus to Jabba the Hutt. Hey, I'd do it. In the last movie we watched together, I was mentioning the relationship between Han and Chewie. And this is another great moment where it does so much with so little. Hey, Kurt, good to see you, man. The lighting's really cool in this scene from above.
A Jedi knife?
Bear in mind, like, it's been a couple years since Empire Strikes Back, so a lot has happened that Han is completely oblivious to. Chewie just kind of holds Han and pets him on the head, similar to like A New Hope when Han pets Chewie on the head. Han is Chewie's pet, right? Okay, so Luke arrives at Jabba's palace, and this, bear in mind, at the time when we first saw this, or for people who first saw it in '83, we see Luke enter all in black, and what does he do? He immediately starts force choking these Gamorrean guards. So these are all things that we associate with the dark side. So it right off the bat puts us in a position where we're not really sure what way Luke is headed. And here's Leia in the metal bikini. Poor Carrie Fisher, man. She complained about her costume for the first 2 movies, and almost out of spite, George decides to put her in a slave bikini. I also like any opportunity where we can see the force power used on the weak-minded, which is a good moment right there with Bib Fortuna. We see it in the sequel trilogy too. Rey uses it a couple times on the Stormtroopers in one of my favorite scenes in Force Awakens. Metal bikini. Poor Carrie Fisher. I don't think she was on quite as much cocaine in this movie as she was in The Empire Strikes Back. So apparently Jabba is not weak-minded, because Luke can't use his powers on him here.
Nevertheless, I'm taking up. You can either follow or be destroyed. It's your choice, but I warn you not to underestimate my power.
And now we get to see the Rancor beast in its full, beautiful display. And the little piggy gets down there too. I love that the Gamorrean guard actually sounds like a pig when it squeals as the Rancor beast shows up. So this beast, they originally wanted to try to do it as a guy in a suit. Like George Lucas had the idea of, oh, this is going to be the coolest looking Godzilla monster ever. And they did a lot of stuff trying to make that happen, and it just didn't look right. So they eventually went to this high-speed puppet here. It really looks pretty good. I mean, of course, all of this has been touched up over the years, but I think it looks pretty solid. I loved Lego Star Wars. Hi, Eric. Jason, good to have y'all join. A lot of the noises of the Rancor, too, were recordings of dogs and stuff. And you can tell that more at the end when the Rancor dies. I don't hear it so much here. Seems to be going good. But yeah, all that footage of the guy in the suit, well, there's not a lot of it, but you can find some of it online as well. Yeah, the first act of this movie is definitely where a lot of the entertainment value is. Once we get away from the creatures and we get stuck on the Death Star and some of Endor, I don't mind the Ewoks so much. But this is where it's at here, all this stuff at Jabba's. First door is open, but the second door is not. Come on, Luke, can you just use the Force to unlock the door? You'd think that would work just fine. Sometimes I'll like try my best to find the various extras up in the palace, like looking and watching, and just to see what kind of craziness they're doing. So here's the dachshund sound effect, the little whimper coming at the end. Wait for it. There it is. Sounds more like a horse. I don't know about that. Okay, so this guy, the Rancor Keeper, his name's like Malikili or something. Apparently his backstory is that he used to work for a circus. And he got arrested because one day all his creatures like ate up the whole audience. So, but he still wears his circus pants. He's got like really baggy, poofy pants. And he's very sad that he has lost his pet. Poor guy. You know how long it took to find a good Rancor? These lines of dialogue here are pretty brilliant. How we doing? Same as always. That bad, huh? Just a lot of fun movement in that scene too, as all the guards are kind of wrestling with them and moving into frame. And Lando's back there, you know, hiding as best as he can. By the way, for any of you who might be joining, if you want to catch up, we are right at the 29th minute, 29:05. 3PO's telling them about how they're going to go be thrown into the pit of Carkoon, where the Sarlacc lives. Harrison Ford trying to act blind. Pretty good stuff. Digital banthas that were added in for the special edition stuff. And here we are on the sail barge. See, so all of this stuff was built on an actual set. Well, this is digital here. But once we get to the Sarlacc, they built that outside and just like elevated a stage, covered it with sand, and it's really hard to explain, but if you see set photos of it, it's pretty obvious how they made it work at the time.
I used to live here.
You're gonna die here, you know. Han has no faith in poor Luke Skywalker. But again, like Mark Hamill's approach to the role here at the end is very different than how we first met Luke. Walk the plank. Yeah, this kind of going off of the walk the plank moment. This scene was one where they had more stuntmen on set than they did for any other Star Wars movie. So they were able to kind of go crazy with this. This beak, of course, and the tentacles were all added for the special edition stuff. That did not used to be there. And this beast, like, underneath the surface is like 5 times as big. Like, it's a huge plant-like monster. Speaking of Star Wars Legos, though, the sail barge one is a real hard level. More Boba Fett.
last chance.
Free us or die. Han and 3PO are the two most oblivious people in on this plan. R2 knows what's going on, Lando knows what's going on, Leia knows what's going on. Here's that flip. I think this was like the only stunt that Mark did not actually do. Shocker, right? He couldn't do a huge flip in the air. And there's the green lightsaber ignited for the first time. Which they were going to make Luke's new lightsaber blue as well, but it didn't play well in front of the blue sky. So that they were like, well, it's a different lightsaber anyway. It probably makes sense to differentiate it more. So they decided to go with the green. Apparently, George Lucas didn't realize how popular Boba Fett was at the time. And he said that he would have tried to make it a bigger role for him if he had known. Because he kind of does go like a schmuck. Gets thrown over, eaten up by the Sarlacc. Of course, those of you who are fans of the expanded universe know that he escapes the Sarlacc. I mean, Han, a blind guy, literally hits him in the jetpack and he falls off and dies. Now, another thing I heard, though, that George Lucas was considering adding a bit in the DVD release in like the early 2000s, maybe 2004. He was going to add a shot where we see Boba Fett escape. That didn't happen either, but how crazy would that have been? So Carrie Fisher was super thrilled to be able to choke this guy. One funny story, though, is like she's wearing high heels, right? So when she jumps over on top of him, she stepped on the little dude in the tail, operating the tail. And they had to cut and figure out a way to like first they had to bandage him up, I guess, and then they had to figure out a way to pad him or have her jump far enough away from her. Billy D talks about how he got hurt in this scene. Something, I think the tentacle or something grabbed his foot and he was in pain and he was like yelling to Harrison that they needed to stop, and Harrison was just like so in it at the time. He describes Harrison as being a really intense actor. Oh wait, I thought you were blind. I mean, for a half-blind guy, he's still got some pretty good aim. There's a fun story that the stunt director tells about all the guys falling down this pit and then having like a chaotic moment down there. Okay, this moment where Salacious Crumb is biting up 3PO's eyeball put Anthony Daniels in like a panic attack. That was the only time that Anthony Daniels says that he felt claustrophobic in the 3PO suit, was when he was on his back and he has this puppet like covering up his face. So I'm sure that not being able to see and feeling, kind of claustrophobic caused him to go into a panic. Carrie Fisher has a little mole on her back, so during the swing when she doesn't have it, it's obvious that it's her stunt girl. There's a lot of swinging in this movie, too. Once we get to Endor, there's like 3 or 4 different moments that Ewoks or Chewie swing on a vine. And our heroes leave the shot before they explode in a ball of fire. So after this, there was originally a scene where our heroes kind of rendezvous together on Tatooine, go back to the Falcon, go back to the X-Wing. But now we just see those two ships leaving Tatooine. But yeah, that was the first shot of the whole principal photography was the sandstorm. There was going to be a huge sandstorm. Everybody's trying to hurry to the Millennium Falcon. And Han kind of has this similar dialogue with Luke where he's like, hey, thanks so much for saving my life. Now I owe you one. And Luke's like, well, don't mention it. I'm going to go off to Dagobah. And they just thought it was too much. And they've kind of crammed all the dialogue into this scene. And it works better. Alright, back to Death Star 2. This is where we get to first see the Emperor as performed by Ian McDiarmid, who at the time was like in his 20s. In fact, I think he was exactly 7 years older than Mark Hamill. So it's funny that he's playing this, I think he was supposed to be 100 years old at the time. Now that the prequels are a thing, I don't know what that math entirely works out, but it's probably still close. But yeah, Ian McDiarmid was a British actor who was highly respected, and they cast him because he embodied the role really well. I really like in this first scene how they hide so much of his face. I wish they would have kind of kept with that, to be honest. You really just see his mouth and his nose. I always imagine Vader and Palpatine kind of going back and forth playing these mind games with one another. Like, Palpatine knows that Vader has a weakness for this kid. It's honestly kind of similar to the sequel trilogy in that Ben Solo has a weakness for his parents. And, yeah, kind of connecting this scene back to the prequel trilogy for just a moment with the rule of two, and that at some point the Sith apprentice will kill their own master. So they're like always trying to manipulate one another. Side note, the word Sith isn't really mentioned in this trilogy at all. It was used in the novelization of A New Hope when it first came out in 1976. And it might have been written in the screenplay, but I don't believe the word is ever uttered until the prequel trilogy. So here we are back on Dagobah with Yoda. One thing interesting is that George Lucas didn't really want to come back here, and it was Richard Marquand's convincing, like he really wanted it. Richard Marquand, for those of you who missed earlier, was the director of this film. Yeah, he had a rough time, apparently. In fact, another director, the guy who directed Empire Strikes Back, was quoted as saying the two of them, George Lucas and Richard Marquand, did not get along at all. But at least the movie stayed on budget. Unlike the previous two films, this one stayed on budget. It didn't have problems with any weather. The only issues were costume and droid issues. I'll talk more about that later, though, because this is a pretty big part here where Yoda says his final goodbye to Luke Skywalker. And we learn more information. We're at 41 minutes and 35 seconds, by the way. If you're just now joining, 41 minutes, going on 42. Yoda is just telling Luke that he has to confront Vader, and then, and only then, a Jedi will you be. So apparently George Lucas consulted with a child therapist about how they would handle the news about Vader being Luke's father. And the therapist suggested that another character confirm that as truth. And so Yoda says, "Your father, he is." Because otherwise, supposedly the story is that the therapist said that smaller children will just assume that it's a lie, that Vader was just lying. So that's another reason why this scene with Yoda was added in.
Unfortunate that I know the truth. Oh. Unfortunate. Take the rest to face it. That to complete was your training. That's not ready for the service. I'm sorry.
There's far less snakes in Yoda's hut at this time. In Empire Strikes Back, there were like snakes all over the place. Fear, aggression. Oh yeah, here's a fun quote from the director. So Richard Marquand described R2-D2 as being egocentric, wild, headstrong, more so than any other piece of machinery that a director could ever be cursed with. I thought that was funny. Poor Richard Marquand just had a tough go at it with a lot of the technical stuff. The last of the Jedi will you be? Kind of reminds me of the name of episode 8, The Last Jedi. There is another. So, of course, you remember that during The Empire Strikes Back, as Luke is flying off to Cloud City, Yoda and Obi-Wan discuss there is another. And now we find out that that other is, in fact, another Skywalker. When Empire was first written, I don't think that was completely confirmed. But once it got down to crunch time, George was like, "Okay, let's wrap this up. Who can we say is the other? Oh, I know. It'll be his sister, and it'll be Leia, because we already know Leia." And there goes Yoda. He disappears and is one with the Force, which is interesting that when he dies, he disappears. Same with Obi-Wan Kenobi, of course, on the first Death Star. But then with Vader, we see Darth Vader get burned. But Vader's body gets burned after he has died, and that will happen at the end of this movie. And of course, Luke is battling this information, and lo and behold, who shows up but old Obi-Wan Kenobi again? And similar to Empire Strikes Back, Obi-Wan Kenobi, the actor, Sir Alec Guinness, showed up for one day. Did all of this in one day. And now he's kind of got to, explain himself, because, of course, in A New Hope, he told Luke that his father died and was betrayed by Vader. And says, well, from a certain point of view, it did happen. And kind of like what I said at the beginning of this commentary, we're starting to learn more and more about Anakin. Kind of setting up the prequels. The prequels are next, you guys. is excited. It's gonna be interesting for sure.
I can't do it. Cannot stay on this. Must stay not stay again. I can't do my own father.
Let's see if we can adjust this just a bit. You were our only hope. I had this spoiled for me before I saw the movie. And when my friend at school told me that Leia was his sister, I was like, what? No! I was actually hanging out at his house at the time, and we were supposed to be going to bed, but of course we were just up talking. And I could not understand that. I feel like that one bugged me more than the Darth Vader reveal. What's funny is, I think in the Return of the Jedi novelization in '83 or whatever, Ben Kenobi says that Luke's mother took Leia to Alderaan, which would explain more why Leia says she has memories of her mom later in the movie. Because right now, with the prequels, we know that Padme dies in childbirth, so why would Leia remember that? Lando just makes me smile every time I see him. Who says they did? But I ain't crazy. You're the respectful one, remember? Alright, so this woman's name is Mon Mothma. She shows up in Rogue One, played by a different actress, of course. She's one of the founding members of the Rebel Alliance. She also had some scenes in Revenge of the Sith, Episode 3, but they were cut from the final cut of that film. Also, something funny is apparently during this shoot, her microphone was picking up all these pigeons. This was all shot on the London soundstage. And so they had to redo all of her dialogue with ADR later on. That's weird. Yeah. Yeah, Corey, I think there is some sort of in-universe explanation as to why Leia remembers Padme being sad, but I don't remember what it is. I think George, when he shot that scene in Revenge of the Sith, as she holds each one of her kids, they like really tried to zoom in on the little baby Leia. That way they could somehow justify, I remember her being sad. Admiral Akbar, the real star of the movie. And there's Nien Nunb. Don't you just want to go see like adventures that Lando and Nien Nunb have? Like that should have been a spin-off. And there's Wedge. And I've always wondered if this guy's beard is actually real. I don't know what it is, but it doesn't seem to like match his head hair. It looks very different. General Nadine. Here we go. Again, kind of going back to what I said when I first started this, Star Wars is all about friends going on adventures together. So the team's back at it. And Luke's had a weird stay over at Yoda's place, but we'll talk about it later, sis. I mean, Leia. This is one of my favorite matte paintings. So all of this stuff on the upper half of this and the Falcon is all matte painting stuff. I think I saw there are like 45 matte paintings used in this film. They're all gorgeous. Like a real artist actually hand painted all these backgrounds.
No, I know it.
So apparently Harrison was notorious for altering lines throughout these movies, and I guess it really threw off Billy D on several occasions. I like this scene a lot though because I've talked a little bit about how the Millennium Falcon kind of seems like another character in and of itself, right? And Han loves her, loves that ship. He's got to turn back and be like, you promised you're going to give her back to me, right? And still, even here, while he's in the cockpit of this stolen shuttle, he's like, I got a weird feeling like I might never see her again.
Hey, you awake?
Han's kind of gotten more conservative in his costumes over the course of these movies, too. Remember in New Hope when his V-neck is like down to mid-chest? Now he's got like this collar thing going on. He's looking more presentable. Here we go again. So in case you missed it, they stole this Imperial shuttle and now they're going to use it to get on the forest moon of Endor. Now we get to see Palpatine in his throne room.
What is thy bidding, my master? Take the feet from the far side of me.
Of course, they can sense that something's going on and that the rebels are heading down there.
Until what of the reports of the rebels?
Yeah, you can see Jar in the back. He made it in this scene. Not all of his stuff got cut out, I guess.
I will have only one of us. No one here is finished, my friend. Go out to the command ship and await my orders. Yes, my master.
See, I think Palpatine wants Luke to show up so Luke can kill Vader. And of course, Vader wants to do the same to Palps. Good old Palps. So this scene does a really good job of like building suspense as they're flying closer and closer to the Death Star. By the time they finally get approval to land on the moon, they're like all the way up to the space station. And here we get Admiral Piet back again. Remember that guy from Empire? So the people that helped them get these shuttles, or this shuttle here, was an alien race called Bothans. Corey, you remember the Bothans? I always wanted to see them on screen. They were a big part of the expanded universe. They're kind of like a wolf-type humanoid race. But we never got to see the Bothans. Like, I really thought in Rogue One that maybe we would see Bothans in there. No.
It's an older concept, but it checks out. I was about to quit.
Danger and ambition, I shouldn't have come.
Yeah, your daddy senses your presence there, Luke. Let's keep a little optimism. Wait a second, Han Solo. Weren't you the pessimist of the galaxy like two movies ago? Kind of goes back to all these characters having evolved over time. And with Vader here, this is a good scene where we can see him sensing his son, wanting to go handle it himself.
They're not going for it, Chewie.
And then finally, they're given permission to land. I told you it was going to work. No problem. He knew all along. Oh, I did have a toy of the Imperial shuttle, though, Corey, at one point. I think I lost some of my Star Wars toys along the way sometime. That's what happens when you move to Los Angeles for a while. So Endor actually is a biblical village I think in the Old Testament. Christina, so glad you could join. Is your husband with you tonight? Or is he on baby duty? Yeah, Endor was a village in ancient Israel that like King Saul met a witch at. So that's an interesting tidbit, but that's where George apparently got the name here. And all this was shot, of course, in the redwoods of California. Notice that Han Solo decides he does not need a helmet. He's above all that silliness. It's me. He's got a lot of good one-liners in here too. And this part coming up, so glad you're both here. Hi Whitney, how's it going? So glad you could join in for a little bit. So I love this moment when Han like confidently approaches these scout troopers, right? And then of course he steps on a twig. If you are joining right now, you need the time code. We're at 58 minutes and 11 seconds. 58 and 14. Han is Han is currently fighting unarmed because his blaster is gone against the scout trooper, just throwing him into big trees. And here we go on the speeder bike chase. So the way that they captured a lot of this was they had their DP, so their director of photography or their cinematographer, had a steady cam, right? And he literally walked through the redwood forest in a little path that they created, and then they sped it up. So I think originally it was like 1 frame per second, and then when you speed it up, 24 frames per second, it looks like they're going really fast. Of course, that only works for the POV shots. A lot of this stuff is done in front of a blue screen. I had one of these toys too, the speeder bikes. They're a good time. Thanks, Eric. I appreciate the love. That would hurt. This planet too was originally supposed to be a planet for Wookiees, like the Wookiee planet, or one of a few Wookiee planets, because the holiday special had come out at this point, so we already knew that Kashyyyk was the thing. Anybody seen the holiday special, by the way? It's pretty good. But George really wanted the natives of Endor to be like a primitive culture, and he wanted to have the story be that this low-tech, or really no-tech, community of animals were able to overthrow the far superior and technologically advanced empire. And he'd already established that Wookiees knew how to use technology, because Chewbacca's doing that throughout the whole series. So he changed it to these little Ewok teddy bears. I gotta say, so like, because the Ewoks get a lot of crap, and then of course Jar Jar gets a lot of crap. So I've kind of been toying in my mind, you know, what's the difference? Why do I like Ewoks, and yet I'm annoyed of Jar Jar? And I feel like the big part of that is just that Jar Jar was made for the sole purpose of like being funny, and yet he fails at doing it. Like with the exception of like maybe a fart joke that an 8-year-old boy would laugh at, most even kids don't find Jar Jar particularly funny. But with Ewoks, kids generally like the look of Ewoks. I really liked Ewoks when I was a kid, but I don't remember ever really liking Jar Jar even in 1999 when I was 12 or 13. I mean, I guess I was an older kid, but yeah. Ewoks look like cute little bears. No, I weird lizard. That is true, Eric. I think too, just with the overabundance of CGI in the prequel trilogy, we as human beings are less likely to relate to a computer-generated character, whether it be Jar Jar or the CGI Jabba the Hutt version. If it's real, if it's a puppet, we're more likely to accept it. Meanwhile, Han and Chewie are just hanging out. It's like, did nobody bring a faster device to like track down your friends? Like a, I don't know, old school bicycle or something?
Where's Leia? Well, she didn't come back. I thought she was with you. We got separated. Okay, well, look, take the squad ahead.
Big fan of Han Solo's like to the floor jacket, by the way. That was one of my first action figures ever, was Han Solo in his Endor get up. And you said it was pretty here. Alright, so here's our first look at the Ewoks. This first Ewok is named Wicket. And hey Joe, how you doing, man? And Wicket was originally going to be played by the same actor who's in R2-D2, Kenny Baker. However, the day that this scene was supposed to be shot, Kenny got violently ill with food poisoning. And so they recast it with another one of the little people who was already on set. And this kid was actually 11 years old at the time. His name is Warwick Davis. And the directors and the crew like fell in love with this kid. And Carrie Fisher too actually became really attached to him and would like bring him cookies and milk on set. But yeah, he found out about the job like through his grandma. I guess his grandma just saw it in the paper that they were looking for midgets, and they were like, you would love to do this. And of course he did. He was obsessed with Star Wars as an 11-year-old boy and had the time of his life. And now he's been involved in a lot of the prequels. I think he might have showed up in the sequel trilogy. But he's always been really good at the fan base. He's a cool guy. I do kind of feel bad for Kenny Baker though. Like, you got sick and you lost the opportunity to be a teddy bear. Those poor little people, though, they did not have a great time on the set of Return of the Jedi. Apparently, the costumes were really hard to move in because they had a lot of padding in it, right? And on top of that, they're walking through the California redwood forest. So they would fall over a lot. And at one point, they came to set with Revenge of the Ewoks t-shirts on because they were so disgruntled. Eat your mama. I always thought that's what Wicket was saying there. Eat your mama. They're smart little boogers, though. Look at him. He knows what to do. He's going to hide, and then he's going to attack. How did that scout trooper creep up on her so quickly? We're at 105.33, by the way. What the? See? Element of surprise. Wicket distracts him. Leia shoots him up. So the Red Guards, the Imperial Royal Guards, were big fan favorites. Not because they really did anything. It's kind of similar to the Boba Fett character, where they looked really cool, but they didn't do much. So that was one thing I actually liked about Last Jedi. Sorry, Andrew. But when we got to see those guards, the Praetorian guards for Snoke, actually like fight, it was like, cool! I've been waiting to see something like this. I thought it was a very entertaining fight scene. So another note here about Palpatine. The actor Ian McDiarmid was cast more because of his physicality, right? And they were like, hey, do you mind trying to replicate the voice of the guy who did it in Empire? Because if you remember, Vader has this little conversation with the Emperor over the phone, over Skype, if you will. And they were like, hey, can you just do your best to replicate that guy's voice? And Ian McDiarmid was like, oh, I'll do that, and I'll even make it better, because he was convinced that he could bring a more sinister, demonic voice to Palpatine. Of course he did, and now that is the voice that we associate with the Dark Lord. Here Luke and Han are suspecting the worst. They find her helmet, and they find the speeder. Man, if it was hard for the Ewoks to walk around in this forest, I can only imagine R2-D2 trying to get around this forest. Like, no wonder the director hated R2. Hated working with that poor droid. Count on Chewie. See, this is another great thing about Chewie, is not only it's this fine balance between him being really smart and good with like technology and flying a spaceship, but he also has needs, right? The Wookiee, he's got some hunger, and when he smells food, he's gonna go after that food. This, if I could pick one day to be on set, this might be it here, to see all these guys stuck up in this net for a while. R2's like, ain't nobody got time for this, let me get my little saw out. So when they fall to the ground, you can see one of the Ewoks is not hiding very well. Upper right, you can see like clearly 1.5 Ewoks. And here they come. This one's my favorite, the dark one with all the teeth, like the necklace thing. See, they also lend themselves, the idea that the Ewoks think of 3PO as a god is just really funny. Like, the Ewoks lend themselves to some really funny moments.
Hey, point that thing someplace else.
It's not only has Luke evolved as a character, but like you really see how Luke and Han's relationship has evolved too. How much closer they are, how much like more of respect Han has for Luke at this point. He's not just the punk kid anymore, right? He's kind of like earned his keep. Ooh. They're all very confused. And this is a great way to use the droids. I just feel like in recent years people haven't come up with good ways to use the droids. Luckily 3PO got a lot of nice attention in Rise of Skywalker, but before that it was not much at all. I mean, even the prequel trilogy, we'll get to that later, but the stuff in Attack of the Clones at the Droid Factory is pretty goofy. That's one of my favorite lines. Why don't you use your divine influence, 3PO? To impersonate a deity? It's alright. Oh, my mistake. He's an old friend of mine. And the name Ewok is supposed to be similar to Wookiee, like inverted. That was the idea that George Lucas had, anyway. I think they're distant relatives. When you think about it, this is kind of like really disturbing. Like they're gonna burn these humans alive? I guess they are a pretty primitive culture. Baby Ewok.
What did he say?
I'm not the thanks, General Soda, but it appears you are to be the main cause that banquet in my honor.
You guys are kind of quiet today. Everybody good? I'm sure you're all just tired of being locked up in your houses for quarantine. Now, is that Carrie Fisher's real hair? That's the question. Her hair has been mostly fake throughout this whole series. The big buns. You mean you don't want to eat your friends, Princess Leia?
Somehow I got the feeling that didn't help us very much.
So this scene does a lot of like kind of showing us again how Luke has evolved. Like he's very calm and confident that he's going to get out. He is intelligent. He's able to think of a good way to get out of it by telling 3PO to, kind of manipulate the Ewoks. And when they don't listen to 3PO, he then uses the Force to scare them into letting them go. That shot where Han is trying to blow out that torch is my absolute favorite. I'm pretty sure I've seen that as a GIF online multiple times. I wonder how Anthony Daniels did stuck in that chair as they had it lifted off the ground like that. I mean, I'm sure he's strapped in pretty good, but... Yay, Han and Leia reunited. But she doesn't kiss Luke, notice. They finally decided that maybe they should stop having Luke and Leia kiss each other. This is a cute little moment here where 3PO basically recaps the trilogy for everybody. Also, there's definitely a couple Ewoks that are like smoking the pipe in here. There he is. Smoke that Endor marijuana. All these little baby Ewoks. I don't know if those things are like remote controlled or what. I think part of what made the Ewoks so hated was the following Ewok adventure movies. Because I hear they're pretty bad. I've actually not seen any of the additional Ewok films. I love that this one Ewok is like purring on Han's leg, though. And after they've heard the full story, they're convinced they need to be part of our family. I'm telling you, Star Wars is all about family. Friends and family. Meanwhile, how much time are they wasting doing all this stuff? And where's the rest of the rebels that were with? Are they like super confused about Han and Leia and Luke's absence? 3PO is thrilled. We are now a part of the tribe. And out goes Luke to go brood.
How far is it? We need some fresh supplies too.
Love this sequence. Give me more Han and 3PO. That's what I want. So here's that sequence of dialogue where Leia talks about how she remembers her mom.
She died when I was very young.
Well, she did die when you were young. Do you remember her though, Leia? Images, feelings? Okay. Beautiful. Maybe they had a photo of Padme hanging up on your bedroom wall? I don't know. But yeah, another thing in the novelization that Ben Kenobi tells Luke is that he dropped off Luke at Owen's house and that Owen was Ben's brother. Of course, that was changed too with the prequels, but apparently back then in '83, Ben Kenobi and Owen Lars were brothers.
That's why I have to go. As long as I stay, I'm in danger.
One thing interesting about this information that Leia gets from Luke is that we don't really have enough time in the movie to see how she grasps the knowledge that Vader is also her father too. And that was one of the better parts of the expanded universe that I really enjoyed, was you get to see her wrestle with that truth and come to peace with it.
I don't understand. You could never have.
You're wrong.
You have that power too. Oh, we'll talk about that a lot once we get to the sequel trilogy. Yeah, I hesitate to say too much about it now. I think during Rise of Skywalker, her Force powers work well. The Last Jedi, the whole Mary Poppins moment, while it looks silly, I was thrilled to see that Leia was able to use the Force in an actual movie. They both do so well in this scene. Carrie Fisher is killing it. You've always known? Then why did you make out with me?
Run away. Far away. If he can feel your presence and leave this place. I wish I could come with you.
No, you don't. You've always been strong.
But why was you confronted?
God, there is good in him. I felt it. He won't turn you over to the Emperor. I can save him. I can turn you back. But I have to try.
To the good side. I love this wide shot here with that light just kind of spilling through the trees as he slowly walks off into the mist. And in comes our other leading male. Ah! So the director, Richard Marquand, one of the main reasons George hired him is because he thought he handled characters well. And I think that is very much true here in scenes like this. I mean, Han, you just walked in on a serious conversation about some heavy news. See, original Han Solo would not have been able to bring himself to apologize for that. Hold me. Ah, tears. Okay, so now we're cutting to Vader's shuttle. It's funny how both Luke and Vader just sense through the Force, okay, let's meet up. Because you see this AT-AT walker, this AT-AT walker approach this landing pad, right? And that has Luke in it, I guess. He surrendered himself to the troopers. So, kind of just talking about Vader a little bit over the course of this trilogy. Because really the trilogy is Luke's. Luke is your main protagonist, right? But Vader is like this overarching presence through all Star Wars films, honestly. But in the very first movie, he kind of is just the embodiment of evil. Like he's this dark figure that we don't really know that much about, except that he used to be a Jedi. Then in the second movie, he honestly becomes more vicious because he's choking people left and right. And then we discover the truth about him being the father of Luke. But we already see him have some weakness when it comes to his son in Empire Strikes Back, and even more so here. When he sees his son face to face, and Luke says, the Emperor hasn't pulled it from you fully. That's why you won't bring me to your Emperor now. Like, he could kill him here. That's part of why Vader's lighting the lightsabers, to demonstrate that he could end Luke's life right here, right now. I mean, he has been ordered by the Emperor to bring Luke to the Death Star.
Indeed, you are powerful as the Emperor.
But he's also choosing to not kill Luke in this moment because he's vulnerable. And I really think he considers this long and hard.
You don't know the power of the dark side. I must obey my master.
Yeah, a lot of this movie, Vader is struggling between two forces. His master in Palpatine and his love for his son. So I see that struggle here in this scene quite a bit, and obviously later in this film during the throne room sequence.
The Emperor will show you the true nature of the Force.
See, if only those stormtroopers hadn't have showed up, then maybe Vader would have finally been like, you know what, Luke, you're right. Let's go off and let's just kill Palpatine and take over. On the good side. Nope, my father's truly dead. And now we have this nice moment where Vader just kind of walks to the edge of the platform and looks out. Very reflective. I hope we get some more good up-close shots of the Ewoks, because one thing I forgot to mention earlier was something that George Lucas changed, was that he didn't like that the original Ewok masks didn't blink, right? So he literally went in and added all these blinks for Wicket especially. I don't know if he did every Ewok, but he did for Wicket. Watch, yeah, you can kind of see that he did it there. He had a little blink.
What's he say?
He says there's a secret entrance on the other side of the ridge.
Alright, here's the Rebel fleet. It's interesting that even though they stayed on budget for this movie, they were also given like a much bigger budget. So I was like, is that really fair? Because your budget, I think, was like close to 40 million at this point.
All fighters accounted for.
Proceed with the countdown.
Admiral Akbar.
All troops assume attack order.
So I had the chance to meet the guy that was in the Admiral Akbar suit. When I was living in LA, I went to the Star Wars celebration in Anaheim that they have every year now. I believe it's annual. Maybe it's every other year. But a lot of the actors are set up at different stations, and you can pay a few bucks to go and get their signature and talk to them for a while or whatever. So I went and met the guy in the Admiral Akbar costume. And I was like, can you sign my action figure and can you write "It's a trap" on the action figure? And he's like, yes. And I'm like, I was like, sorry, do you get that a lot? He's like, you have no idea. He was a nice guy, a little funny, but he was really nice. Tim Rose. There he is, Wicket's blinking eyeballs. See, now that I've told you about the blinking eyeballs, you're gonna be fixating on it. And again, this is another chance where the Ewoks use the tactic of distraction, the element of surprise. They're smart. Come on, Han, you're not giving the Ewoks enough credit. You and everybody else out there are not giving these Ewoks enough credit. I like the Scout Trooper design quite a bit. For those of you who watched The Mandalorian, that was one of the better parts of the show when the Scout Troopers have Baby Yoda and they're like trying to shoot at that can or whatever that's nearby and just totally miss it. Because, of course, Stormtroopers can't hit the broadside of a barn. That's something else I don't know how they really pulled off. Like the Ewoks spinning around, rotating like that. I mean, obviously they're in front of a blue screen at that time, but they probably just moved the camera, is my guess. Hey. I'm screwed now, bro. So this is the first time I've seen this since Rise of Skywalker, and I really want to try to look out to the left of the throne, because for those of you who've seen it, you know that Rey goes into the Imperial Vault right there to the left. So is there a door of some kind? Could there be a hidden door there even on this set? Apparently that chair only moved properly like half the time as well. So Ian McDiarmid, who played the Emperor, would have to like move the chair with his feet. Luke, you're so serious. Guards, leave us. We're not going to be able to watch you fight in this movie. So this is really the first time we get to see his full face. With those yellow eyes. Or those red eyes. Fire eyes? We'll call it fire eyes.
Oh no, my young Jedi. You will find that it is you who are mistaken. But a great many
Things. I also feel like his makeup is more white or gray in this movie, and then in the prequels it almost has like a yellow color to it that seems odd.
can never be turned from the dark side. So will it be.
It's close. It also Probably doesn't help that the actor has gained weight over the years. He's just a skinny little 20-year-old kid right here. Like I said earlier, he's 7 years older than Mark Hamill. So Mark would probably be 27 or 28 at this point. So I guess that would put Ian in his early 30s.
It is pointless to resist, my son.
Your faith in your friends is yours. That reoccurring theme of friends and family.
Your friend up there on the sanctuary roof. I'm walking into a trap. That is your revelation. It was I who unlocked the alliance.
They had at least 6 different Darth Vader costumes on set for this movie. I don't know if that was the case for the earlier films. Unlikely. They probably only had one suit for the very first movie. The shield.
Quite operational when your friends arrive.
Well, we didn't get a good chance to look at the side of that wall to see if there was a door there. Okay, listen to the scream that the guy has when he throws the bomb at him. Han throws something at this guy coming around the corner in just a second. And it's a very unique scream that's used again in a lot of Lucasfilm stuff and a lot of Disney stuff, actually. Here it comes. Ow! So that sort of scream is called the Wilhelm scream. I'm sure some of you probably heard of it, but yeah, it's like an iconic scream that was pulled from a movie done way back in the 50s that they use again and again in Indiana Jones. I heard it in Toy Story the other day when I had Toy Story on. I was like, hey, that's a Wilhelm scream. Okay, so Nyan Num is Lando's little co-pilot here, right? He's showed up in the sequel trilogy. His language is an actual real-life Kenyan dialect. I wrote it down. Hold on, where is it? He's talking now, and it's funny. Yeah, the dialect is called Haya. And apparently when the movie screened in Kenya, like the residents were thrilled to hear like their actual spoken language up on screen in a Star Wars movie. Yes! Wilhelm scream. It's a trap! So apparently that line in the script was originally, it's a trick. I don't know when it got changed or why, but I think it's a trap is much better, because I can't imagine there being a lot of internet memes about it's a trick. But, okay, so back to the Wilhelm scream real quick, Corey. Apparently Lucasfilm has started a new reoccurring scream in like the sequel trilogy and stuff, and in Solo and Rogue One, but nobody has figured it out yet. So I have there's a Star Wars community online that I'm a part of, and everybody's like trying to figure out what the new Wilhelm scream is. You want this? Yeah, I think it has been overdone, the Wilhelm scream, which is why they probably decided to come up with a new one. Yeah. Give in to your anger. You make yourself more my servant. I think his lines, the Emperor's lines, stand out to me more than many of the characters in this movie. It's just the way that Ian McDiarmid like chews on the scenery throughout this picture. Like your father are now. That line always threw me off when I was a kid too, because I was like, you mean like right now? Like right this instant, Luke has turned bad? What is he doing that's bad? Like, it didn't... The kids are funny in the way that I took it very immediate, like it was happening right at that moment. There's the chicken walker in the background, the ATST. And don't worry, guys. The droids and the Ewoks have a plan.
Well, they're on their way. After all, I'm sure this was a good idea.
Don't move!
We surrender.
So kind of going back to like this indigenous culture being able to overtake these Imperials, I think that one of the stories like George Lucas used for inspiration for the Ewoks came from the Vietnam War. And it was the indigenous Viet Cong forces that prevailed against the technologically superior U.S. So it's not unprecedented, folks. In fact, we see it again happen in The Mandalorian. And like I think my least favorite episode of The Mandalorian, when Mando goes to have that little fling, that possible romance thing with that mom, and they that little tribe of villagers take down the Empire. And it's chaos. Do we have a lot of Mando fans out there? People, y'all enjoying Mandalorian? I remember I had an Ewok board game as a kid, though, and it was not a very good game. But one of the figures was that Ewok flying on the little glider. It's also important to remember that the Ewoks don't get out of this unscathed. Like they suffer some losses. Christina, we love it. Yeah, come season 2, we should get together and watch some more. Especially since Ahsoka's on it. What? How about that news, Andrew? Big fan of the casting. I gotta say, I am a big fan of Ashley Eckstein. Like, I can't get enough of that girl. She is really cool. So I was a little bummed to hear that she didn't get the part, but not surprised, I guess. I like the idea about Baby Yoda possibly being a Yoda clone. I think it could work. Someone might just bring Ewoks back in a new movie. Corey, I have not heard that. About the Ewoks being more athletic and formidable. That's interesting. Well, I know when the rumors for Rise of Skywalker were first circulating, they were talking about how they were going to return to the moon of Endor. Well, it ended up not being this same sanctuary moon that we're familiar with. So we didn't get that chance. But we do get Wicket for like a hot second at the end. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know. I like the Ewoks in this movie, and I think let's just leave it at that. Yeah, I agree, Christina. Hey, we agree about Star Wars. we agree about a lot. But Eckstein is really awesome. Harry Gremlin's leaping card. Ooh, if they were Gremlin-like. Maybe they aren't even good Ewoks. Like we could come across some like evil Ewoks. Now that could be interesting.
Now, sir. Hold him. We're not going to attack. I have my orders from the Emperor himself. He has something special.
Have you guys seen the cosplay that Ashley Eckstein does though of Ahsoka? There was one Star Wars celebration or convention that she went to where she had a professional makeup artist come and do it, and looks really good. Just never believed the Ewoks could overpower anyone. Feral Ewoks. Oh, Ewoks. God bless them. Hey, there's Moff Jerjerrod. Or he's not a Moff. I'm trying to remember what the title is for Jerjerrod. Uh-oh. There was apparently a lot of other stuff happening on the Millennium Falcon, like with the rest of the crew. Like there were scenes that were cut of like the crew back in the hangar and doing all kinds of stuff. Corey Edwards, you gotta be kidding me. No, I was not in the group when Ashley was there. When was that? Because I was in Bad, what year would that have been? Landed there in I was probably in Bad from 2013 till it ended, I guess. So I must have just missed her. Oh, man. So you know her. I'm very jealous. No, I had no idea. Dude, we're going to have to talk about this. If I can get a signature for Ashley next time. I know that her husband, I think's working for the Pirates now, the Pittsburgh Pirates. They're from Florida originally, I think, but maybe they're moving to Pittsburgh. I just listened to an interview that Ashley had, and she kind of talked about the new casting. She was there from 05 to 09. Yeah, I missed her by like 4 years, dude. Well, that's really cool. Every time I watch an interview with her, she's just the sweetest thing. And the stuff she's doing with her universe is pretty cool. Oh, and here's where the Ewok dies. See, I was trying to tell you guys. They're not invincible little teddy bears. They take a hit. Hi, Greg Long. Good to see you, man. This part devastated me as a kid, though. I was like, why would you kill such a beautiful little creature? That was an action figure I never had. Never had an Ewok. Yeah. See, and kind of talking about Ashley as a working actress, I like to think that they at least gave her a read. Like, they put her on tape, right, to play the role? Because she started in film and TV. So, thanks, Cody. Thanks for joining, man. Have a great night. So yeah, like a lot of the stuff that people were saying online about Ashley was like, well, she's a voiceover artist and it's totally different. Well, my acting teacher always taught me that good acting was good acting. So if you're a good voiceover actor, then you are going to be a good actor on stage or on screen. And I think Ashley has those chops. I mean, I never met her personally, but the way that she changed that character, because let's face it, Ahsoka was nothing interesting when that first movie came out in 2008. And over the years, she made the character her own and now is a huge fan favorite. So I like to think in my head that she at least got an audition, but she doesn't open up much about it, which is fair. She's very, very humble and generous about it. All right. So 3 seasons of Blue Collar Comedy Show. And wasn't she on That's So Raven? She was on That's So Raven, and she did one of the Brady Bunch movies. So remember earlier when I said there's a lot of swinging on vines in this movie? There's another one. They're funny. That was kind of a Wilhelm scream-esque sort of scream. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Ashley did. It's always interesting to get a full shot of Chewbacca too, because you can really see how lanky, how skinny Peter Mayhew was. Jonas, the new guy, he's thick. I forget what sport Jonas played. I need to look that up. New Chewbacca. Did you guys hear today that one of the actors from the sequel trilogy died from corona? He wasn't a big role. He was one of the rebels, older guy, in his 70s, I think. And he was in J.J. Abrams' movies, The Force Awakens and Rise Skywalker. Basketball player. Okay, so Jonas used to play basketball. Yeah, he's 6'11", 230 pounds. Hefty dude. 6'11", 250. Death Star. That's right. My wife helped me come up with, yeah. Back to the sad news. I can't remember what his name was. Jack something? And then we recently lost Maximin Saito, too, the guy who plays Lor Santeca at the beginning of Force Awakens. But that was, I forget how he died, natural causes. Let's see, this guy's name, Andrew Jack. I don't even know if he had a line in the movie, but I definitely remember his face. Oh, here's the moment where we have the I love you, I know, except it's reversed. I like that. I like that a lot. Corey, no, I have heard and read all about Trevorrow, however it's pronounced. I've heard about his script. I did not know there was an animated recap of it though. That sounds cool. And funny. Oh, I love funny. Yeah, I think I don't know that I would have liked his script or not. It's always really easy for the internet to be like, oh, we should have got that version because it's the version that we didn't see, so of course it's going to be the better version. But when I read it, or when I read about it, I was like, I don't know. I know that there was going to be a scene where Chewbacca flies an X-Wing. That would have been kind of cool. See him all crammed. Again, the big guy who plays Chewbacca now, he could have been really crammed in an X-Wing. You are unwise to lower your defenses. Oh, I should have looked for the door. Guys, I'm missing every opportunity to see if there's a door off to the side. I don't really see much there. Another Jedi flip. For some reason, those Jedi flips or jumps didn't stick out to me as much in the original trilogy. But then when oh, thanks, Corey. I will definitely check. Oh, I saw this. I saw the video advertised. The what word am I trying to think of? The little photo and the title, but I didn't watch it. Your destiny. Yeah, not until the prequels was I like, oh, those are Force jumps. Like when Darth Maul and Obi-Wan are fighting in Naboo. Good old Wedge. Wedge gets a lot of good story time in the expanded universe. I wish he would have had a little more screen time in the movies, but you know, it's all water on the bridge now, I guess. I was always trying to figure out if this is Han Solo in the mask and behind the thing. Because it's got to be one of the rebels, right? A rebel threw on the costume, or the uniform, and disguised themselves as one of the Imperials. That shrug that Han Solo does there was something that Adam Driver kind of tried to recreate. He did that with a couple of Han Solo's movements with like all the pointing that Harrison Ford does. But in Rise of Skywalker, at the very end, when he first gets the lightsaber passed to him from Rey, Adam Driver does a little little shrug thing that is an homage to Han Solo's shrug. Han is in the helmet. Okay. It, for whatever reason, it doesn't quite look like Harrison Ford to me, but I'm like, I think it is. His eyes. Okay. I'd have to go back and look at it again. Well, if he disguised himself that well for me, I mean, then of course the Empire being dumb didn't get it. Vader finds out the truth about his daughter. His failure is complete. And this is what sets off Luke. So in this final battle, I guess John Williams and the sound designer Ben Burtt really worked to synchronize the blades hitting each other with the music. Yeah, I can't tell. That's something I read today for the first time, and I was like, is it matched up? That's my vote, at least. No, it makes sense, Corey, for sure. No problem. Have a good night, Niels. Thanks for joining. Hey, and you can always watch more later on my channel. Show me cinema. You can watch all my commentaries there at double speed. I always wonder too what this little bow tie thing is on the Palpatines. Any ideas, Corey? It's like this little gelatin looking bow tie. It's so dark. Yeah. The sound design throughout, obviously, is pretty incredible. I love that moment there where Luke looks at the hand and realizes, he's turning into his father, and then rejects that idea. I'm a Jedi. So be it. Jedi. Team is planning to go out to dinner after this. That probably is it. Because you don't see that little bow tie thing in the prequels. I need an explanation for that. But we'll go with the dinner idea. I think that sounds pretty good. All right, so the shield is down. Here they go to make their final attack run. This part terrified me as a kid. Especially because it goes on for like a really long time. You're just seeing Luke writhe on the ground. Now, does this version have the Darth Vader "no" added to it? I think it probably does. I have not watched the Disney Plus version yet, but as some of you might know, George Lucas really loves it when Darth Vader yells "no." Because he did that at the end of Revenge of the Sith. And then he went back and added a no to this scene when he throws Emperor Palpatine down this shaft. Yeah. Yeah, this scene was like terrifying. Never knew it was a possibility. You will die. Come on, Vader. And Ian McDiarmid is just so creepy with the way he grits his teeth. Yep, there's the no. Why did you make poor James Earl Jones do that? I mean, I suspect they took the same audio from Revenge of the Sith and used it for that. Okay, so when Emperor Palpatine hits the bottom of this thing and you see this blue essence, a lot of my Star Wars friends online are hypothesizing that that is literally his spirit transferring to the clone on Exegol. So, because they've already begun this cloning process of Palpatine in case of this sort of thing, but they hadn't had much success. So when the spirit entered the first bodies, they were like, whoa, you were way too early. This body looks like a weird deformed Snoke body. So I like that idea. I mean, it kind of flies. Anything to kind of make the connective tissue of these stories run together a little bit better is something that I'm all for. See, yeah, having Vader survive would be slightly problematic. And I thought the same thing with Kylo Ren and his redemption. The problem is, if you have these war criminals survive, they have to still like be tried and like sent punished for what they've done. So I imagine with the Lego video game version, since the Lego movies and stuff are always really ridiculous, that it's probably pretty funny. I don't know. You're a writer, Corey. How do you? I don't think you can really bring back a villain from the dark side who still has to face the consequences of their heinous crimes, right? I do understand the complaint that people have about Starkiller Base, because I think Death Star 2, like if you repeat a Death Star one time, like okay. But if you do it a third time, I understand that it can get a little tiring. I accept it, but I get the complaint. So tough to win anyone's allegiance after redemption, right? Can you imagine Vader coming back to the party on Endor and be like, "Hey guys, we did it! High five?" No? Okay. Well, I'll just head off and do something else. Apparently, so the actor who plays Vader in this moment, of course, is different than the guy who's been wearing the suit throughout the whole trilogy fighting. This is an actor by the name of Sebastian Shaw, and he didn't know much about the scene at all until he arrived on set. I guess it's the story of Saul of Tarsus. Yeah. Oh, true that. Book of Acts. So yeah, Sebastian shows up. He's a good friend of the actor who plays the Emperor. Yeah, Ian McDiarmid and Sebastian were good friends. And Ian wasn't even expecting to see him this day. And he was like, "What are you doing here?" And Sebastian Shaw's answer was like, "I don't know, something about Star Wars, I guess." So this, I remember being kind of freaky as a kid too, to see all the scarring on his face. I hear that they modified this look a little bit after episode 3, once they kind of got a better handle of how Hayden was going to look. I've played Vader, Anakin. That's a great question. Well, how many actors have played Vader, Anakin? We know for sure this guy, Sebastian Shaw, David Prowse, James Earl Jones, Hayden Christensen, Jake Lloyd, the kid from Phantom Menace. We have Matt Lanter in the Clone Wars. So that's 6 right there. And there's probably a 7th guy who did it for Rogue One. Yeah, it could get pretty high up there. I always thought it interesting that like this guy has a very different accent than the James Earl version of the character. Mark Hamill, I'm telling you, he doesn't get the credit he deserves. Live action 6? Yeah, I think that's about right. Is that what I counted up? Am I missing one? Come on, Wedge, do your thing. Let's blow this thing and go home. There's another matte painting. Pretty. Count animation wizard review. Count the NPR radio. Right, then we start to get, do we count the Lego stuff, you know? Then it gets a little crazy. It's probably best to just consider the live action versions of the character. You better hurry up and get out of there, Luke. I always loved how his collar thing just kind of popped forward. You can't see it as well in that shot, but as he's dragging Vader along, he's got this long fold-over collar thing. That's really cool looking. Rogue One guy would be 6. Yeah, that sounds right. Yeehaw! Good old Billy D. Let's party, Ewoks. So some of you might know that they changed this party scene too quite a bit. Before I talk about that though, let's get to this Han and Leia moment here when Han finally realizes the truth. Because you're force sensitive, because you're a Skywalker. I won't get in the way.
I won't get in the way.
It's not like that at all.
See, if I was Han Solo here, I would be like, how long have you guys known this? Not only because you guys have been kissing, but also, like, why wouldn't you tell me? Like, why would you just leave me in the dark like that? Harrison does great, though. I mean, after 6 years, or 9 years, or whatever it was, can't do math right now. I mean, these actors all really bonded, and Carrie Fisher talks about that too with the crew, because it was mostly the same crew that they had throughout the whole process. Okay, and then this Darth Vader scene, this was shot really late, towards the end, and I don't know, it's still very strange to me that some Force users disappear during death and others do not. I'm sure there's an explanation somewhere, but I haven't figured it out. That's a pretty big fire you built there, though, Luke. Like, how long did it take him to set that thing up? So yeah, there was a different song here at the end. All of this stuff, Cloud City, was added for special edition. And then, I think there's a shot of Naboo in here somewhere that was added after the prequels. Tatooine, looking very digitally enhanced. Yeah, here's Naboo. We so free! Thanks, George. You had to have those Gungans shoved in there. And then this was the first time we ever saw Coruscant, was when the special edition was released in 97. Yub dub. Oh, but they didn't have the Jedi Temple in that version. It's the first time I've seen that. There used to be a statue of Palpatine in that shot. The special edition that came out in the 90s had a statue of Palpatine that they were pulling down to the ground. And they did not have the Jedi Temple back there. So they switched the two. That's kind of interesting. Hey, that's fair. I don't know. Some of these choices that George decided to make were a little strange. But yeah, so the song used to be like the Ewoks literally singing "Yup Dum," and they changed that to just this orchestral version, which I like this version quite a bit. It's a little bit more majestic, but some people love the original. Like my aunt loves the original Yub Nub song, and I think it was because it like played on the radio and actually made it on like the top hits or something. The top hits back then. All right, so we're getting the moment where Luke sees the Force ghosts, and this kind of goes back to a lot of the stuff like Naboo added in, where George is just trying to get these pieces to connect, and poor Hayden. Apparently Hayden had no idea why he was shooting this stuff. And he was like, if George would have told me that it was for the end of Return of the Jedi, I would have played it completely different. So, it really doesn't make sense from Luke's perspective, because he wouldn't have any idea who the Hayden Christensen version would be. And there are too many versions of these movies, right? So really, like, that was a change that George made specifically for us as an audience, to be like, oh, I see what you did there. This goes all the way back to Episode 2. It's kind of goofy. It doesn't really work as well, but whatever. I don't know. Empire Strikes Back is better, right? Yeah, how would Luke know who Hayden is? I'm not really sure. Well, guys, this was awesome. I know most of you have left and gone to bed, but those who are still around, thank you so much. And if you've watched any of the previous ones, thank you so much. Again, you can always check them out later if you want on my channel. Hopefully one day I'll start putting up better and bigger and nicely produced videos. And once the movie theaters start opening up, I can do like reviews of current movies and make them like really quick 5-10 minute things for you guys. But prequels are next. Get excited. I will probably try to tackle episode 1. I'm thinking Saturday. I'm thinking I'm going to do an afternoon commentary. But we'll see. I'll keep you posted. I'll make sure to promote it as much and as annoyingly as I possibly can on Facebook. All right. That should do it. Have a good night, everybody. And as always, may the Force be with you.